Hello and welcome to a special edition of the DFS Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Riddell, aka Dub Deuce85, and joined as always by my co-host and partner in crime, Pete Cole. We are doing a preview for you. I know normally when you see us, we're breaking down a slate for you, but with college football right around the corner, we wanted to start doing some preview shows like we have done in the past, mainly when I was on Blog Talk Radio. And just start breaking down some of the football, give you guys something to think about, some names that you want to know, so that when that first slate drops, you're not looking at all these, teams wondering who's this guy, what's this guy about, having to absorb all this information, with 48 to, 60 hours prior to a slate. You'll already have a general idea and some information to digest it. So we are going to break down the ACC, all 14 of those teams. Pete is going to handle a couple. I'll handle a couple, and we'll kind of go back and forth. If we have anything to add, we will. And at the end, we'll give you some of our, top favorites, sleepers, maybe some avoids, some of that type of stuff. We like to do things organically here as best we can. Pete, how are you this evening? I know it's a lot of information to go over and throw on your plate with everything. So I hope everything's good with your family and your personal stuff. I hope you're raring to go and ready to make some money at college football, man.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks tomorrow, opening weekend. So that's not much time. And I'm excited. We had a big year last year, actually a huge year for CFB. So I just expect even better. A lot going to be going on, right? We have podcasts every week, our Saturday morning live show before noon kickoff. We got a lot going on. And going over this ACC earlier tonight, so there's a lot of information. There is a lot of football teams, man. This ACC stacked.
Yeah, it's going to be a big year. And we're definitely going to try to do like an SEC, a Pac-12, maybe a Big Ten if we have enough time. We might not get into like the match and stuff, but just the main, conferences for people that they're going to be doing, weekly slates on. So we are going to start with you, Pete, starting with Miami and Syracuse. So why don't you give us, your breakdown of those two teams, starting with Miami. And for you guys, we're just going to be talking about, the QB to pay attention to if there's a QB competition, running backs, who's going to get the carries, wide receivers, stuff like that. Just, a little bit of info to kind of, digest and chew on. So Pete, take us away, man.
All right. So yeah, I'll start Miami, the better team. My two favorite teams actually in college football, Miami and SU. But so in ACC, we got our two divisions. So Miami is in the Coastal, and it looks like they're going to be fighting with North Carolina, I think, for the top two teams in the Coastal. And this is a key season, I think, for me and Diaz. This is like year 3 for Diaz. Decent campaign last year, but they were 8-3. They lost the bowl game, the Cheez-It Bowl last year to Oklahoma State. That's when Eric King, my man, blew his ACL out or tore his ACL, but he's gonna be back. So it looks like he's gonna be back first week. And I wasn't expecting that when we seen that happen, but everything I'm seeing, he's ready to go. I mean, how healthy is his knee really? I guess we won't know until the first game. But I mean, to me, King is one of the best players in ACC. I mean, this is a guy that he's had such a weird career, right? Started out in Houston. I mean, he was a big time statistic packer. 2,000 yards. He had 36 touchdowns. 2018, 674 yards, 14 scores on the ground. Then he had a bad 2019. That whole team shut down that year, and they went to Miami. And last year, he was good. He completed 64% of his passes, and he's exactly what this team needed. So I think he's a Heisman Trophy candidate. He's a dark horse, but if he can put it all together, I'll be playing King like pretty much every week I did last year. To me, he's a DFS star, especially the way he runs, he throws. So King's the man, I think, one of the top players in the ACC. Beside that, you want to run the running. We'll go to running back. And running back, we got a little bit of competition. We got two guys. We got Hassan Harris, who returns for a second season for Miami. And then we have Don Chaney Jr., who actually came on really nice toward the end of last season. So I think when it's all said and done, Don Chaney Jr. is going to be the main man there. He's versatile. He did have shoulder surgery in off season, but he should be ready. But he's going to what do you have? Last year, I'm trying to look. Harris has 643 yards, 5 yards per carry. And then he went in that slump midseason. Chaney came on, had his best game against Duke. He had 62 yards, 4 receptions for 81. And then Harris actually came back from that slump, had a decent 4 of his last 5 games, and became more consistent. So you got those 2 are your top runners. One of them is going to end up breaking out. I'm assuming it's going to be Chaney. You also got Jalen Knighton in there. You got Thad Franklin Jr. You got Corey Brown. But Chaney and Harris are your 2 guys. Harris is the popular name, but don't sleep on Chaney as probably right now my favorite running back for Miami. Going to receiver. Now, when we're going to talk about receivers, I'm just going to throw tight ends in there also. And Miami, once again, Miami's loaded. They got they got guys returning. The one big name that's actually coming to Miami is our old DFS friend of ours, Charleston Rambo, coming from Oklahoma. And he's going to make a mark, I think, in Miami this year. I was reading earlier one of the Miami newspapers, and Ed Reed's been spending a lot of time with him. Ed Reed's now, I think he's the chief of staff for Miami. And even though Ed Reed was a defensive back, he obviously knows football. It's been spent a lot of time at Rambo. Has got nothing but great things to say about the guy. And we all know what Rambo can do. We've seen what he did in Oklahoma. Let me see. As a sophomore, 43 catches of 743 yards, 5 touchdowns, 17 yards per catch. Last year, he caught 25 balls for 312 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the problem last year, he started out as number 1 on the depth chart, dropped down, but he's a speedy guy. He's a big play threat. He's a vertical threat. And he's always been in the shadow of these guys like Marvin Mims, Theo Weiss, D.D. Lamb. And this year, he could actually become that big-time player, I think, that we all expected. So that one game was in 2018, remember, against Alabama. He had 74 yards, a big touchdown, a semifinal game. And that's the player we thought we were going to see last year. Don't sleep on Charleston Rambo this year for Miami. And then they're still stacked. Then you got a guys like, let me see, you got Mike Harley. Mike Harley is on the Blitnikoff watch list this year. That's jumping a whole other level for him. Last year, he had led Miami 57 receptions for 799 yards, tied for a team at 7 TDs last season. So he's actually in reach of the Miami career reception record. Reggie Wayne actually holds it with 173. Santana Moss has the receiving record for 2,500 yards, but Harley's actually only needs 48 receptions to tie Wayne and almost 1,000 yards to match Santana Moss. So, but still, if Mike Harley's going to be a serious candidate for that Blitnikoff award, he's going to meet a much better season than he had last year. And it's going to be tough, though, with the Rambo right there with him. You also got Brevin Jordan is gone now, but coming right in there is Will Mallory. We saw what Will Mallory did last year. Mallory's another kid, talented kid. Mallory came in, caught 22 passes, 329 yards when Jordan was hurt. Jordan was hurt a lot last year, remember? And then we got another name here you want to remember is the next big tight end, I'm thinking for Miami, is Elijah Arroyo, freshman. Miami's tight end and everything I'm reading about, seeing from Elijah Arroyo, he's a guy that's cleared 6'2" in the high jump. So he's a true freshman, a lot of talent. Not saying it's going to be this year, but somebody to kind of keep it in the back of your mind is Elijah Arroyo. So, Miami's loaded. You got Derek King. You got 2 runners and Harris and Chaney. And then you got all these receivers. You got Rambo. You got Mallory. You got Mike Harley. Plenty of DFS goodness for this team. Do they have enough to beat out North Carolina? I think so in the Coastal Division, but I guess we'll see. I'll talk about North Carolina in a while. But for me, Miami is one of the stacked DFS teams this year in the ACC. That's what I got for Miami. Just give me a second here. Let me go to my Syracuse Orangemen. Syracuse is, once again, they're in the Atlantic Division. Obviously, lower in the Atlantic Division. And it's all going to come down. And this is a big year for Dino Babbers. They had one victory last year. If he doesn't turn his program around this year, this is probably going to be Babbers' last year. I mean, they broke out in, was it 2018? When they had 10 wins. The next year they had 5 wins. He hired Sterling Gilbert. That didn't do much for the offense. And here we are this year. I mean, I see them probably winning another 1 or 2 games, and starts out with quarterback. So we actually have a quarterback, a little bit of controversy this year. First, we got Tommy DeVito. We made fun of Tommy DeVito last year. Spent more time on his butt than he did standing up. I mean, this guy, the poor guy, got beat up a lot last year. And now Babers brought in Garrett Schrader from Mississippi State. So remember, DeVito only played 4 games last year. He was hurt a lot. From what I've seen so far, DeVito is running the #1 offense. But Schrader is a kid. He's a 4-star, former 4-star. He's more of a running quarterback. So if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Schrader by the end of the season run the Syracuse offense. Let me see. Schrader said he's a dual threat for 700 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 587 yards on the ground with 6 touchdowns. And that was in his freshman year. Last year, he lost the starting job after that coaching change. So he played 10 games in his freshman year. So I'm assuming DeVito's going to start out as a quarterback. And then don't be surprised if by the end of the season you got Schrader on the offense. Probably not much DFS goodness there. I did play, I played DeVito a little bit last year in some games, just hoping we'll get some of them. He's always cheap in DFS. Once again, the offensive line is terrible. So unless something changes, this is not much DFS here in quarterback. The Orangemen running backs. Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker's back. Sean Tucker actually had one of the best freshman seasons in Syracuse. I mean, he led the ACC last year in yards per game. 9 games, he averaged 69.6 yards per game, 739 combined yards, 4 touchdowns. So actually, and I didn't know this, but Tucker he is part of the Doak Walker Award watch list. He got nominated in July. So, and that's 82 running backs, 82 best running backs in college football. Sean Tucker is on it. So he could have a breakout year this year. Definitely he has DFS ability. Definitely you can use him during the season. High expectations for him going to second season, but we do have 2 other running backs come into to Syracuse. Abdul Adams, Javion Howard, they both sat out last year due to COVID-19. So they're both back. They're going to help the offense. They're not going to take Tucker's job, but a guy like Adams, he played 11 games 2019, second string back. He was an Oklahoma transfer. He sat out 2018 due to the transfer rules. 19, 336 yards, 141 reception yards. So he's going to help. Howard is kind of a short yardage back. He's another guy, not much DFS ability, but you're going to see Howard and Abdul Adams in there. But there's also a guy, this kid, Josh Huff, the big, powerful kid, record-setting high school career. I mean, Tucker's going to get the bulk, but don't be surprised by the end of the season where Josh Huff's got the potential to make an impact, definitely in short yard situations for Syracuse. So you can see by like December, we're talking about Josh Huff a lot at a cheap price. Maybe it's some kind of a Saturday as a value play, especially if a guy like Sean Tucker goes down. So Huff's a real talented kid. Wide receiver. This is where Syracuse has got a couple studs. Most of us guys that have played DFS last year, we all know who Taj Harris is. Taj Harris is the clear-cut #1 at Syracuse. He's a stud. He had a career year last year. He could become Syracuse the all-time leading receiver this year if he's got a big year. He's a dynamic guy, dynamic after the catch. He can make huge plays down the field. And if they get better play up front, Taj Harris could have one of the best receiving years in college football. You got Anthony Quealy after that. Quealy had a decent season 2020, 37 catches, 400 yards, pair of touchdowns. He should be able to take a little bit of step forward. And if Quealy does take that step forward, it's going to force defenses to leave Harris in that single coverage. Because you leave Harris that single coverage with his great hands, boom, Harris going to be in better year. So Harris is a big year on Harris is definitely going to come down to how good Anthony Quealy do. But Anthony Quealy is a good receiver. You also have Courtney Jackson. He's going to be a possible breakout player with Nakeem Johnson gone. Jackson, great high school career, almost 2,000 yards in high school, 24 touchdowns as a junior, 20 more touchdowns as a senior in high school. So Courtney Jackson, somebody kind of putting it back in your mind for later on in the season. But your two receivers are Quealy and Taj Harris. So Syracuse, I mean, not much there with quarterback. We're not sure if it's going to be Devito or Schrader. Running back, we do have Sean Tucker. You can play Tucker every week. He's a cheap DFS running back. And then receiver, Taj Harris, who I think personally is one of the best receivers in college football. I would put him in one of the top 25, definitely. And Anthony Quealy could be another nice sleeper also. So pretty much that's Miami. That's Syracuse. One of the top teams, one of the bottom dwellers in ACC.
Yeah, man. Syracuse, Taj, he's a stud. I don't think I ever used anyone from Syracuse in my main lineup last year. Sure, Taj put up some numbers, and he definitely will. But I think I'll be changing my team this season. I'll definitely want to get some exposure to him in the main lineup, but I'll have to see how it goes because, yeah, Syracuse, unless that quarterback play improves, it's going to be another tough year. But
that's the problem.
Good play in terms of getting somebody in there to at least push, the rest of the QBs and potentially, make some plays or something. Because, yeah, if the line sucks, it's tough. But you got to still make plays somehow, right? So We'll see. All right, the first team I'm going to talk about here is Boston College. Actually, very excited to talk about Boston College. You wouldn't really think that. They came on late in terms of fantasy purposes, made us some good money, especially Zay Flowers, Hunter Long, who's now gone. But it's a big season for them. I think that we're going to see this Boston College team be pretty competitive. If they don't, go to a pretty high-level bowl, I think it's going to be considered a disappointment. Expectations are really high. They got the Jerk store, Phil Jerkovic back, the Notre Dame transfer. He threw for over 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions. Very accurate passer. Huge influx of talent is coming in with the weapons around him that he should be able to do very, very well. So he's going to be a guy that maybe comes in there, that 7-7, 8K range, a little bit cheaper that people aren't really talking about. But he's somebody you want to be looking at from day one, especially in their first couple of games. At running back, it's going to be a little bit of a different story. We're used to them having a power back. Travis Levy's there. He's the most experienced running back on the team. Rushed for 321 yards a season ago. He also caught 35 passes for 285. So the running backs in this offense are going to be very, very involved in the passing game. Phil likes to hit his running back, for easy passes, rack up those yardage. So Levy had a lot of catches. Only one career touchdown in 4 seasons. Doesn't find pay dirt very often. I think that will change this year. But there's other guys in the backfield that are going to push Levy. So it's not to say that he has the job and he can coast. If he struggles early, they're not afraid to go with the other backs. Alex Stinkfield, the former West Virginia, player, transferred over. They're back up. He's got home run ability. People don't really realize that, running behind Letty, he didn't really have a lot to do. But Stinkfield's got some pop. 4.2 yards per carry, which is okay. 372 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that was in limited action. That was just 78 carries. You come in and play mop-up duty. Very little, for him to do. Did catch 9 passes for 55 yards. So I figure he's going to be a big part of this offense, even as the backup. If he comes into it at like 3.2 or 3.5 or something extremely cheap where he's under 4K, I might mess around. You guys remember I would play a cheap running back in my main lineup quite often. And I lucked out a lot doing that, getting a cheap touchdown. But Stinkfield can catch passes, and he's an electric weapon and has pay dirt, home run ability. So he could come in for Levy on, those passing downs and break a big one. So if he comes in at like 3.2 and Levy's like 6K, I may seriously consider Stinkfield because I don't think that Levy's that much better than him. And then they got their power back, Pat Garwell. He's suffered some injuries in 2020, wasn't able to play much, did rush for 122 yards. They like him a lot. He's going to come in on those tough yardage rolls. He'll be that touchdown vulture. So if we do run Stinkfield or Levy, we maybe cuss him out Garwell for stealing the touchdowns from us. So those are the 3 RBs to really focus on. And then pass catchers. They have some really good ones. Zay Flowers is my guy. Looks like a superstar. He paid the bills. I like to say that a lot about guys. It's my new thing. He paid the bills for us last year, especially late in the season at like 15, 20%. First BC player to be named the All-ACC since 2012, so that's a big deal. Caught 56 passes, almost 900 yards, 9 touchdowns in a shortened season, which is fantastic. His 2019 stats were 22, 341, and 3. So a big improvement. So I'm expecting him to put up, well over 1,000 yards, 10 plus touchdowns. That Jerkstore Flowers connection is going to be a big one. I'm going to be pairing them a lot, whether that's in my main or in GPP. Time will tell when we see the prices, but those two are going to be big time players for me. Kobe White is back from an ACL injury. Made him miss all of 2020. White was a big time player. He was expected to be, a high level weapon. He does have over 1,400 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns in 3 years with this program. So expect him to be a solid number 2, assuming that he's not going to be, any ill will from the ACL. You see guys come back from ACL injuries all the time now. It used to be an injury that would end guys' careers. Now they come back within, a year or less. They also have CJ Lewis. He had 28, 465, and 5 last year, so he's a big weapon. And the OSU transfer from last year, Jalen Gill, 29, 435, and 1. So there's really just like 5 legit weapons here. Not to mention at tight end, this is going to be my guy here, Trey Berry. He's going to be a beast. Hunter Long graduated, went off to the NFL. You guys remember Hunter Long was a big-time play. He was putting up 15, 20-point fantasy games on the regular. Jurkovich loves his tight ends. Trey Berry is a guy that was over at Jacksonville State. I know you're going to say, oh, wow, that's what a big deal. Caught 33 passes, 534 yards. The shortened season there at the FCS. It was in the spring when they played. So he's still in game shape, still ready to go. But Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, and LSU were all going after this guy hard. They all were trying to acquire him, all trying to sign him, and get him in there. And he went to Boston College for some reason. So that's got to tell you, Trey Berry has major talent. If a team like Alabama or LSU, who is always in the mix for a national championship, especially Alabama, is trying to get a guy like Trey Berry, he's going to be big time. He saw what Hunter Long did in this offense. He wants the chance to the NFL. Dirk's going to feed him. So Berry is a guy. I've been hyping Berry up to my friends in Dynasty. I don't really play Dynasty CFB. It's not that I don't want to. I haven't found a league. Plus time is kind of the essence for me with all this DFS we play all the time. But if I was in Dynasty, I would be looking at Trey Berry. I think he's going to be a big time player. And I think he's going to come into the season like, 3-4K, and people are going to see that he played at Jacksonville State and forget what Hunter Long did. And on that first slate, if he's like 5-10% or less, and he scores a touchdown and gets 80 plus yards on 7 catches, we're going to feel pretty damn good about ourselves. So I'm very high on this Boston College offense. I think I'd probably, out of all the content providers that are doing CFB this year, it's probably going to be the highest on Boston College. I really like this team. Moving on to Clemson, they're going to look a lot different. They're out without Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne. They're both off to the NFL. They got our guy, man. He came in 2 times. DJ, I didn't practice his name before, so I'm going to butcher it. I had to practice it last year. So I'm just going to say DJ Ugalele, I think is how we pronounce that. Immediate Heisman candidate. It's going to be a big-time starter. We played him when he came in for Trevor and started. We had him as a main team guy, and I think people were scared for whatever reason. They didn't use him. And even that loss against Notre Dame, he threw for 439 yards and 2 touchdowns and put up, 30-plus fantasy points. In his other start against Boston College, he threw for 342 and 2 touchdowns. So, he didn't, he just looked like a guy that could have played every down last year. He didn't shrink in the competition, even against Notre Dame. Notre Dame had to play the game of their life to win that one. And you saw when they actually played them again, they just destroyed them. He also rushed for 4 total touchdowns. He didn't have like a lot of dual threat ability. His yardage was pretty bad. He only got goal line touches pretty much, and he only got to mop up duty when Lawrence was healthy. I think that might change though, but he's a big time quarterback. He's getting, and he has the most badass. You guys know NIL, you get name, image, likeness. Their college guys are getting paid now. It's a Dr. Pepper and a Bojangles sponsorship. So those 2 things are just a great combo. So I'm a big fan of DJ. He's going to be a big time producer. I'm certainly going to be wanting to pay for him. Where with Lawrence, we never wanted to pay up for him because of blowout and all that. I think DJ is a guy that might be blowout proof, to be honest. Lynn J Dixon at running back would appear to be the heir apparent to the throne here with Etienne gone. It's a career 6.6 yards per carry, which is second best in Clemson history behind only one man, the former incumbent, Travis Etienne. So now he's gone. So Lynn J Dixon is that guy. He's rushed for over 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns in 3 seasons with the Tigers. He's caught 18 for 183. Travis got all the passing work, so expect Dixon's receiving numbers to go way up. Travis is a big-time receiver. Lynn J's not that same guy, but he will be involved. However, Their sophomore running back, Kobe Pace, has been pushing him in the spring practices. The coaches love him. So it sounds like Dixon's leash is going to be fairly short. So if he comes out and stumbles right away, or, a couple games he's ineffective, there's going to be looking at Pace in a timeshare. It sounds like he's going to start off between 25 and 40% of the snaps. And I might be even low saying that, but it sounds like he's going to be in the mix. So the running game here doesn't interest me quite as much unless they're both super cheap to start. Wide receiver, this is usually wide receiver U. We're going to be expecting big things. Justin Ross had a spinal fusion injury last year, sidelined him for the entire year. Coming into the season, we all expected him to be a potential Heisman candidate, best receiver in the country. His first 2 years with Clemson, he caught 112 passes, over 1,800 yards, I should say, and 17 touchdowns. So if he can regain that form immediately from a serious injury like a spinal fusion, he's not, this offense won't miss a beat. Obviously, losing out on their two main guys is going to be a big deal, but Justin Ross is a big-time receiver. Clemson suffered a lot of injuries at receiver last year. Joseph Nagata was another one that had an injury after only playing 4 games. He had 240 yards and 3 touchdowns in his freshman season before the injury season last year. So I would expect him in year 3 to make a big step up. Frank Ladson had 6 touchdowns in 2 seasons before the injury bug caught up with him. He has 27, 409, and 6 in 2 seasons in Clemson. So after Ross, you're looking at, kind of a platoon of guys. But Ladson, Nagata, and even a guy like E.J. Williams, who had 306 yards and 2 touchdowns in his freshman season, are going to be in the mix. And then the tight ends, Braden Galloway, 27, 369, and 2. And Davis Allen, 16, 247, and 4. Those are the main names to know. Galloway is getting a lot of hype right now. It's not like DJs. They got a good rapport going right now. So we could see the tight ends involved a lot more here, especially if they want to take it easy with Ross at first until he gets, back up to game shape and shakes off the rust. They can be relying on a guy like Braden Galloway. So Clemson definitely has the juice as usual. But Boston College, Pete, that's going to be the team that I'm going to be hyping every ACC slate for the foreseeable future. So that being said, unless you want to say anything about those guys, let's jump over to Duke in North Carolina.
All right, let's start with Duke first. Let's get Duke out of the way. Probably the worst team at Coastal Conference, I would think. But I don't know. I mean, you got David Cutcliffe. I think he's a good coach. I mean, he's done a good job with his program. But I really think, he's probably the best coach you've ever had. 6 bowl appearances, but he's starting to wear out his welcome there. And he's he's definitely on a hot seat. And the main problem with this Duke team is turnovers. And it's kind of like we were talking with Tommy DeVito in Syracuse, where their quarterbacks now you got Chase Bryce, who was a quarterback last year. He transferred. But last year, Bryce threw 15 interceptions. He was also sacked 34 times in the same games. So, you got to give a little bit in his defense that it wasn't all Chase Bryce. So there's not much DFS talent to go around actually for DFS games. It looks like that junior quarterback Gunnar Holmberg is gonna be the quarterback this year. He's a big kid. He's got a decent arm. He's mobile enough for a David Cutcliffe offense, but he's not Chase Bryce either. So, like I said, he's not, and no one wants to be Daniel Jones. You just want him to be a solid quarterback and not throw interceptions. But I think that's not going to happen this year until this offensive line gets short up. I'm sorry. So Gunnar Holmberg is the quarterback. No DFS. Going to running back, we actually have decent running back here. Mateo Durant. Deion Jackson did graduate. Durant actually was Jackson's backup last year. Jackson was drafted by the Colts, but Durant actually led the team in rushing, 817 yards, 8 touchdowns in 11 games. So that's 74.27 yards per game off the bench, 6.81 yards per carry. It's actually the 4th highest this season in Duke program history. So Durant is a capable, talented running back. He had 400-yard games in his last 7 last year. So the thing is, he's not a workhorse, but he's fast. 6.8 yards. I said 6.8 yards per carry, but he's a fast kid. And the main thing with Durant is he's going to be he's definitely the alpha dog there. But he's going to get heavy attention from the opposing defenses because they're going to stack the boxes and they're going to force Homburg to beat them with his arm until he proves he can. And can Homburg do that? I'm not sure. So not that Chase Bryce was a superstar, but Chase Bryce to me is a much better quarterback than Homburg. So Durant does have DFS ability, definitely on certain Saturdays. Said good speed, 817 yards last year. You'll get you some 100-yard rushing games. It's pretty much it though for Duke. You want to go to receivers. Their top receiver is a senior kid by the name of Jake Bobo. He's a leader of the team. Let me see, 647 yards, 52 receptions, 2 touchdowns, and 32 career games. And that's about it. You're not going to be playing too many Duke receivers in DFS. So on this team, if there's anybody we're going to be playing, it's going to be Mateo Durant. And he's not a bad player. The problem is he's not a workhorse, is how much he's going to get, especially when anybody's going to be testing Gunnar's arm. That's Duke. I'm not going to spend too much time on him. The next team is North Carolina. I think North Carolina is powerhouse. I want to say Miami's my favorite team. I'll be different when I'm going to say I think Miami is a top team in the ACC. But we come into Carolina, and I really think that Sam Howell is probably one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. I think I think he is the best quarterback ACC. Here's a kid who's all ready to go to Florida State. Last second went to North Carolina. 2 big seasons already had 3,600 yards first season, 38 touchdowns, seven picks. That's it as a true freshman. Then he followed up 68% of his hit 68% of his throws, 10 yards per pass, 3,600 yards, 3 touchdowns, and only 7 receptions. This kid's a great quarterback, pro style passer. He's got the experience. He's got the moxie to take Carolina to the next level. He's going to be a top draft pick in the NFL, and I can see he should finish his career with over 100 touchdowns and 10,000 yards. So Sam Howell is the key to that whole team. To me, Sam Howell's probably, and I want to say I'm a Derek King guy, but to me, I think Howell probably is the best quarterback they see over Derek King. And then where do we go from there? You know, you hear all this talk about, I guess we'll go to running back first. You hear all this talk about, okay, last year, North Carolina had your favorite duo, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. I mean, they won us a lot of money last year. I know you had some huge weeks with them. They were probably the best combo in the entire country. They're a major focal point of that offense. Unfortunately, though, everything comes to an end and they're gone. Now what's Mac Brown going to do? But hey, it's at North Carolina, great program. And it's not as it's easier said than done to replace these guys. But who they went and got grad transfer Tai Chandler. Tai Chandler is 4-year player for Tennessee. Rushed for 2,000 yards, 45 career games, 5th most all-purpose yards in the program history, 14th most kickoff returns. So Tai Chandler is going to make a dent in North Carolina this year. Phil Longo he's going to use him in the run game, but he's also going to use him in the pass game also. To me, Tai Chandler is a home run threat type of player. He's going to make big plays happen at any time. So I really think before it's all said and done, Chandler is going to make people forget Williams and Michael Carter quickly. So Chandler, I think, is a great play for DFS. A guy will be playing every week. I'm curious to see what his price is going to be week 1. I think, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, I think he could have probably had what was one of the biggest transfer portals anybody in America. Who else we got? We got DJ Jones. Then we got Caleb Hood. They didn't have a lot of experience last year. Jones, limited action last year as true freshman. And Caleb Hood, he was originally He's originally recruited as a 3-star quarterback. At started training camp. He was taking reps as a running back, so he should be behind DJ Jones and Chandler. But they say he's got great size, he's got great vision, and they've moved the running back to be really good for him. So this is more of a sleeper player toward the end of the season, maybe next season. But the two main guys is going to be Tai Chandler, of course, maybe a little bit of DJ Jones. Wide receiver. Same thing as we're talking about in the quarterback. Last year, 2 studs, Daz Newsome and Diami Brown. Both of them, where are they? They're both gone now. So where are we going to go now for receiver for UNC? First receiver guys, Josh Downs. He's the man I think's having a breakout year. He's a sophomore, small kid. He's 5'10", 180 pounds, but he's explosive. He came out of North Gwinnett High School, 4-star recruit. He actually, even with that team they had last year, even with Diami Brown, Daz Newsome, Downs is still able to get into some games with that stack receiving corps. Line up 74 snaps. Also had a big 75-yard touchdown pass at Orange Bowl. That was his breakout game. He had 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, which definitely brought in all the high expectations for this season. So Josh Downs is going to be, especially your DFS, Josh Downs is going to be your main guy we're looking at for a receiver. Another guy we got is Bo Corrales. I think Corrales is another guy that's got the Bojangles sponsorship. But he's a guy that's been around forever, it seems like, for North Carolina. He did miss most of last season. He had a sports hernia surgery, but he is back. I think he played 3 or 4 games. But he can definitely make an impact. We saw he had a good game at Florida State last year, 4 catches, 140 yards, and touchdown. But he's probably going to be behind Josh Downs for DFS wise. But there's going to be weeks we can use Bo Corrales probably in the $4,000 or $5,000 range. And he said he's not going to be a big stat stuffer, but he's definitely going to break out year and definitely going to be usable. And then the last guy actually is Coffee Brown, who's Diami's brother. And he's a true freshman last year, but he actually saw the 3rd most snaps for wide receivers. And after Bo Corrales got injured, Coffee Brown came in and got a lot more snaps, played a lot more, which is good for this year. And he's all set now to start this season. He's young. He's fast. He had one big game against Virginia. He had a 76-yard touchdown. So he's definitely behind Downs and Corrales. But once again, toward the end of the season, another sleeper type role for Coffee Brown. So we got. This North Carolina team is up there with Clemson and Miami for DFS stars. You can see him howl every week. We can definitely use Tai Chandler. I'm a big Chandler guy this year, and we could definitely be looking out for some of these receivers. So many ways to go for North Carolina, but I think they're probably, to me, one of the teams that beat the ACC.
Yeah, and Chandler's going to fit that, that mold. He might not run like Jay will when we made all that money on him, but he'll be a low-owned guy, and we know that North Carolina team can run, and he can bust some good weeks at sub 20% ownership and give us those 30 or 40 point, home run games. He'll definitely be worth targeting once pricing comes out and we see where we stand with that. All right, FSU, Florida State. A lot of eyes are going to be on the Florida State program. Mackenzie Milton comes over from UCF. He suffered that career-threatening injury in 2018. He's been a legit Heisman candidate for a while there. He has over 1,000 yards in the air and on the ground with 82 total career touchdowns. But it's not as if it's going to be given to him. I think most people expect him to take the job. But, the last year's starter, Jordan Travis, he at least proved himself capable. He's a really good DFS play at, that sub 7K, 6K range price tag. 574 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground, which is great, true dual threat. He also threw for over 1,000 yards, just 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So the passing actually was, atrocious early on, and then it got better as he got more comfortable with his weapons and his offense, and the running game was so strong. His passing definitely got better as time went and didn't have to run as much. So it'll be interesting. Those two are going to push each other. Whoever comes out of that competition as the starter is going to have to warrant consideration because those are two solid bona fide players. And whoever wins that is going to be playing at an extremely high level. The only concern I might have is if they try to play both at times, which would ruin their fantasy stock. So I have read some stuff about where Travis would get packages if Milton won and vice versa. So we'll have to just keep that out. Where I'm most excited about the FSU guys I'm targeting is their running game. Their running game is super strong. Their entire offensive line from 2020 is back. So that's great for continuity when you have those guys, you know, they know each other. Their running game is the same. You know, those were fourth in the ACC with a YPC of 5.1. Sean Corbin, the former Texas A&M transfer, he had over 400 yards last year with a YPC over 6. Had 5 touchdowns. And then Lawrence, it was like the last week or two of the season where we had Corbin at low ownership and Toafili. You could play both. I think there was a game where they both destroyed. Toafili had rushed for over 350 yards, a 9.6 YPC. What a monster, 2 touchdowns. So both really solid heading into the season. They're going to obviously cannibalize each other a little bit, but I think there's going to be enough in the running game to support both, especially at the expected lower prices that they're likely to be. Because if you know, DK's algorithm, when it looks at guys, it's not going to price somebody who had 400 yards and 5 touchdowns up at 8K. And with Toafili, same thing with just 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. It'll probably be like 5K, if that. So I think we'll be able to target them right away. The issue here is the receiving game. It's very tough when you look at it on paper. The top returners are Ontario Wilson, who was a bit of a sneaky play at times. He's a burner a bit. He had 32, 82, and 2. Keyshawn Helton, who we thought was going to be way better than he was, 14, 119, 2. Yeah, a lot of hype for him. People thought he was going to be like a breakout candidate or a sneaky, and it just didn't work out. Tight end Cameron McDonald, 23, 263, and 2. So those are the top 3 guys returning from a yardage standpoint. Nothing that's going to, make you super excited. They do bring in Kansas transfer Andrew Parchment, though, who, you look at last season in a shortened 7-game season, he had 24, 197, 2. That's a bad season. He sucks. It's not really the case. You got to dig deeper. Kansas just didn't have any quarterback play at all. I mean, they had some of the worst quarterbacks in all of football, including FCS. In 2019, when play was a little better, he had 65 catches for 831 yards and 7 touchdowns. So there's really reason for me to believe that he could return to that form and possibly be a 1,000-yard receiver with a guy like Milton throwing on the ball or Travis, whoever that ultimately ends up to be. Like I said, Kansas QBs were the nut low in 2020. So getting a better QB to throw to him and really, no real pecking order to receivers where Parchment can come in and really just claim that WR1 spot right away if he wants. I do think Wilson has some really like Des Fitzpatrick vibes to me as maybe the WR2 that will break and pop for a couple games here or there with multi-touchdowns or 100-yard performances when people just don't expect it, which means it's probably going to be more of a GPP guy. But I like the way he played last year. So he was probably my favorite of this group. But I'm certainly not going to be targeting any FSU receivers in my main lineups anytime soon to start the year. I'm all over the running game, though. Louisville, this could be a tough one for Louisville. I think it's the year 3 or 4 for the coach. They're losing playmakers like Tutu Atwell, Javian Hawkins, both money makers for us. I just mentioned Des Fitzpatrick. He's gone as well. It's not easy to replace that kind of production. Malik Cunningham is back. All eyes are going to be on him. He's going to have a lot of pressure on him. I think Cunningham will be a really nice DFS play on most given Saturdays. He had over 2,600 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and 20 picks last year. He also rushed for 600-plus yards, 7 touchdowns. The year prior, he threw 22 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So his accuracy then was good. It was a lot worse last year. He had a lot of turnovers, some very untimely turnovers. Turnovers are never, good, but he had some really just bad spot turnovers for them. So there is talk of the backup possibly seeing time if Cunningham, falters early, but I don't believe that. I think he's way too good. I do want shares of him weekly on multiple lineups because he's just going to have to do everything for this team. And that might mean that he only throws for 100 yards, but then he turns around and rushes for 200 plus and 3 touchdowns. We don't really care how the yards come as long as they come. So Cunningham's he's a beast. Running back situation is pretty faulty. Hassan Hall has got a grip on the RB1 according to camp reports. Only rushed for 223 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. It was Hawkins' backfield. The year prior, Hall did run for 500, so he does have that ability. Jalen Mitchell looks like he's got the RB2 job. He rushed for 350 and 2 touchdowns, and then Mo Berkeley 180 and 1 touchdown. They're all going to be in the mix. It's all pretty crummy on the surface. I don't think it's going to be much of a DFS. It's going to be that situation where Hassan Hall is like 4'8" or 5'2", and you've got one running back spot left, and he looks sexier as Saturday comes closer, and you love the rest of your lineup. Well, Hassan Hall can get me 80 and a touchdown, right? And then all of a sudden, Mo Berkeley's getting all the work. So just be careful with that running back, trio of Louisville guys. I think it's going to be rather tilting most of the season. Plus, Cunningham's going to take yardage from them. And then as far as receivers go, that, like I said, a lot of production. Marshawn Ford is their best. He was a walk-on, turned the most productive receiver left. He did have shoulder surgery, so it'll be interesting to see how he returns from that. But he's a red zone beast. 6 total touchdowns last year, all in the red zone, 7 touchdowns the year prior. So anytime Cunningham gets this team into that red zone area and Ford's in the game, he's going to be getting targeted. So definitely like him, and he's always a cheap guy. And then they're going to lean on guys like Braden Smith, Justin Marshall. Braden Smith popped at times, had 370 yards. Justin Marshall, nobody really probably knows him. He had 87 yards. He's going to have to be thrust into, WR2-3 work. And then Georgia Southern transfer QB turned wide receiver. You guys will recognize his name. Shea Wertz is going to be in the mix as well. He transferred over to Louisville. Obviously, there's no QB job for him there. He's not the best passer anyways. When we used him for Georgia Southern, we mostly used him as a runner anyhow. So he's a multifaceted weapon. So I could be interesting with a team that's lacking playmakers. I think Wertz could be thrust into a big role right away, whether that's like bubble screens or, getting running plays himself. Whatever it is to get the ball in his hands. He did rush for over 3,000 yards in 4 years at Georgia Southern as a dual threat QB. If they can get him some short routes, or if he can catch at all, he can turn the burners on and turn any catch into a home run or into a touchdown. So I definitely like Wertz. He could be one of those sneaky GPP, like 3-5 guys that you just pop in your lineup and hope he breaks an 80-yarder or something. So I'm definitely a fan of his, but the Louisville offense, it looks really bad on paper. This looks like a coach getting fired season to me for Louisville. I hope they're able to play well, but losing what they did and not bringing in all that good of talent, it's going to hurt. I think with the ACC looking much improved, especially from teams like Boston College, you got your Miamis out there, North Carolina, who you just hit on. And there's a couple other teams we'll talk about here that look improved as well. I don't think Louisville did anything to make me think they're anything other than, a middle tier team in the conference. And that's just not going to be good enough to keep his job. So that's it for the FSU LV Louisville side. Now let's talk about Virginia Tech and NC State, a couple of fun teams with some DFS options. What do you got for us on these teams, Pete?
All right, let's start with Virginia Tech. And this is Hendon Hooker's gone. Remember that was at the beginning of last year. We had 3 decent quarterbacks there at Virginia Tech. We had Hendon Hooker, who went to Tennessee. We all played a lot in DFS. Quincy Patterson, and then Braxton Burmeister. Braxton Burmeister is the last man standing. And it seems to me, though, that this is the first time in 3 years that someone probably since Josh Jackson, that somebody's actually coming in as the entrenched starter, and that's going to be Braxton Burmeister this year. He's been there for 2 years. He sat out season, came from Oregon. Said he participated in a 3-man battle last year with Hooker and Patterson. He wound up number 2 on the depth chart. And then COVID screwed him up. I mean, that was 2019. I'm sorry. Then COVID screwed him up. He missed some of the first 2 games of 2020 with COVID. And then he came into that game against North Carolina State. Didn't know the offense much. Was being out from COVID. Had no practice time. But he didn't start practicing until to that midweek with the COVID. And then he got pounded and broke his toes. One of the offensive linemen stepped out in practice. So he had a terrible year, but actually I think with him sitting allowed him to learn the playbook. Now became healthy, came in that game in December. I think it was the second week of December against Clemson, and he did a really good job. He was 10 for 12, 127 yards against Clemson, good defense. Then he came in, he beat Virginia in that Commonwealth Cup game. 68% passing, 212 yards, 60-yard touchdown, Tavion Robinson. So if you watch those first two games and then you see him those two games at the end of last season, you can definitely see how much he's changed and how good of a season actually I think Burmeister is going to have. And I think he's probably one of the most unsung quarterbacks in the ACC. Running back, we have, once again, Khalil Herbert is gone, and it's going to be tough to replace him. I don't think they really have a successor lined up for him yet. We may not know that until the season starts. So it's really not anybody with any DFS ability right now. You got a couple of guys returning. You got Marco Lee. You got Raheem Blackshear, Jalen Holston. You got true freshman Kenji Christensen, Malaki Thomas. So not much DFS you're going to be worrying about maybe as the season goes on. So don't worry about quarterbacks. And receivers, man, if you look at this receiving, they probably have one of the best group of receivers in the ACC. And I didn't realize that until I actually started looking at the receivers. So first of all, I mean, you start out with tight end, James Mitchell. Mitchell's all AC, definitely has a shot at being all AC first team tight end. If he doesn't, there's something wrong because he's a big time talent. If not, got to blame like Brad Cormelson or something because he's got NFL future. A guy like Mitchell, big time player. After that, then we got a guy I used a bunch of times last year, Trey Turner. Trey Turner's he's had a decent career, but the problem is I don't think he's caught more than like 30 passes in a season. So with his talent though, he should be catching 50 passes in a season. Once again, the offensive staff's got to get it's inconsistent quarterback play. The offensive coaching staff, same thing, same deal with Mitchell. They're not on the same page, but Trey Turner had a good year, and then our third guy we're looking at here for DFS purposes is probably of course Tavion Robinson, and he's a junior. When he came as a freshman 2 years ago, instant playmaker, 38 passes, 519 yards, 3 touchdowns last year. He's like an electric type player, game breaker. When he gets on an open field, threat to score all the time. He's a slot receiver, but he should be expected to play a little bit on the outside this year. So you take those 3 receivers, and James Mitchell, Trey Turner, Tavion Robinson. A lot of these are not like household names for DFS players, but those 3, you line them up with Braxton Burmeister after the way he finished off last year. We got a decent DFS team from Virginia Tech, and probably top 3 ranked in their little conference there. So that's Virginia Tech. After that, North Carolina State. North Carolina State, I think, is also going to be a sneaky team this year. I kept saying that they're talking about a quarterback controversy with Devin Leary and Billy Hockman. Billy Hockman's got a Middle Tennessee, but Devin Leary is back. He broke that leg early last year. He's back. Before he broke 8 touchdowns. So don't sleep on Leary as actually having probably, I'd say, like a top 5 quarterback in the ACC if he puts the season together. Because you look at his receivers, I mean, you got Amika Emezi, took advantage of extra year of eligibility. They're actually returned 9 of their top 10 receivers last year. Beside Cherry Angeline, I think everybody else is back. And that's Emezi, 47 catches, 738 yards. Thayer Thomas, 42 catches, 529. And Devin Carter, 29 catches, 477. So that's 3 pretty damn good receivers on that team. Leary's capable of definitely getting to him. But I think the straw is going to stir the strength this year is Zonovan Knight, the sophomore running back. 2019, 5 yards per carry, 745 yards. 5 touchdowns, and then last year, even though he only had a 100-yard game last year, he still had 788 yards to lead the team. 10 touchdowns. He had a touchdown every game of his last 6, I believe. And you also got Ricky Person in there too. Person's going to get his share of carries. He's definitely a good runner. He's also a kick returner. Person is. So this isn't a bad DFS team, a DFS squad for NC State either. Since you got, MZ Thayer Thomas, Devin Carter, middle of the pack. But it's all Donovan Knight for DFS.
All right. Dun, 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 dun. So now I'm going to talk about Georgia Tech and Pittsburgh. Georgia Tech is one of those teams that's going to be fun. They're improved, I think. Obviously, Jeff Sims, who was kind of a sneaky dual threat DFS option from a year ago. We so cheap all the time that you could get away with using him. I think he's going to make major strides this year. We saw he had 25 runs of 10-plus yards a season ago, showing you his massive upside as a dual threat. He's going to have to come around as a passer, though. Didn't have a single 300-yard passing game, which is obviously a problem. Completed less than 60% of his passes. So before we can really crown him as a top-flight fantasy option, he's going to have to show us some more in terms of accuracy and overall just, a 300-plus yard game would be both wonders. Doesn't have the best receiving group, though, so that might be tough. Rushed for 492 yards, to 19 total touchdowns. He's just a guy that I think if he comes in the season too cheap, we definitely have to consider. The problem with Sims is the running back group is really strong, so he may lose some of that rushing yardage, or on the flip side, he may take from this talented group of running backs. So we'll have to see. But they're definitely the strength of this team is going to be running. Jahmyr Gibbs is back. He rushed for 460 yards. He had 303 receiving yards, 205 return yards, so well over 1,000 all-purpose yards. Gibbs is just a stud. Jordan Mason has been a strong presence for this team, rushed for over 350 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Dante Smith came on, those Mason was hurt or Gibbs had in this game. Smith was adequate, 296 yards, 3 touchdowns. So all three of those guys be in the mix. Gibbs is the sexier option, while Jordan Mason, if he comes into it as a 3.5, 4K cheapy option, somebody who may still end up getting, 35, 40% of the carries when it's all said and done. So definitely targeting the running game. Receivers, I don't really have anybody that I'm looking at from a fantasy standpoint except maybe Malachi Carter, who was the most exciting of the group probably. He had 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, but the rest of them, it's going to be a wait and see type of thing. I don't really have anyone that I want to highlight because I just don't find them that important just yet. I need to see Jeff Sims prove to me that he can be a passer before I ever consider running any of his receivers in the main lineup or a GPP anyways, when I'm really just going to be focused on the running game. So Sims, Gibbs, Mason, and little Dante Smith is going to be the bigger names for this squad. Pittsburgh, a fun team, a veteran squad. Kenny Pickett is the quarterback, the rare 5-year vet using that additional year. Just under 8,000 passing yards, something like 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, just real close. 39 touchdowns in his 4-year career. He's actually rushed for 15 scores, and he has a receiving touchdown on his resume. So Pickett is one of those workman lunch pail quarterbacks that I like to talk about on our CFL shows. That's just going to get it done for you. He rarely is going to be that 40-point scorer, but he's rarely going to be that 10-point scorer either. He's just going to get that 20 to 25 fantasy points, and he's safe for that. Now, he has an amazing weapon, I'll talk about in a second, in Jordan Addison. But first, the running backs, the Davis boys, Vincent Davis and AJ Davis. Early in the season, we talked ourselves into them because they're so cheap. We didn't like it very much, but the fact remains they're going to get a lot of work. There's really nobody else outside of those two that's going to get the carries. Vincent Davis did rush for 632 yards and 6 touchdowns, which really isn't that horrific of a stat line. And then AJ Davis, 266 and 1. So I think starting off with Vincent Davis, he is the guy that we'll be, looking at for DFS purposes. And he could be one of those running back last guy in that I frequently talked about on the cheap side. At receiver, they're loaded. Pickett could have by far his best season ever with these 3 main weapons. Jordan Addison, he was definitely YFC property. There was nobody else in the industry except for us talking about him week in and week out. He did miss a couple games here or there. He had 60 catches for creepy number, 666 yards, and 4 touchdowns. But he was that PPR guy. He frequently would have 7, 8 catches in a game, 80 yards, 8 for 80, no touchdowns. Then he broke a big touchdown for like a 75-yarder and got hurt. He was on his way to like a 3% owned. Only us had, YFC members had him. And then he got hurt at halftime, unfortunately, on his way to a big game. I think he's going to be well over 1,000 yards quite easily. That touchdown number should be up, and we could be seeing him flirt with, 80 plus receptions as well. Year 2 Addison is going to be a massive. Or he's probably going to be up on draft, boards after this season that he has. I'm very, very hyped for him. I have way less #Waltz guys in football than I do in basketball. You guys hear me talk about it on Twitter and stuff, but Jordan Addison is definitely one of the inaugural college football classes of the #Waltz guys. Returning next to him is Taysir Mack, has 134 career receptions. Any guy that has over 100 career receptions in a few seasons is a sure-handed stud. Mack was kind of the WR1 that everybody knew, and they would roster him because he was cheaper than Addison a lot, but this is Addison's squad now. So Mack's going to figure in as the WR2, and he'll get a lot of PPR work too. There'll be plenty to go around for Pickett. And then Shockey Lax Louis, 26 receptions for 327 yards. As a WR3, I think he'll even push for 500 plus yards. So they have 3 bona fide DFS options here at receiver that you could pair with Kenny Pickett. And there are going to be times where Pickett, scores 35 fantasy points. It will happen. He'll have a big four touchdown game with receiving weapons like this. It's just going to be harder because he doesn't really run that much. But he's got to pepper these 3 main guys with a lot of targets. And I'm expecting a big season from my man Jordan Addison. So now we're moving on to the last 2 teams. We have Wake Forest and Virginia. Pete is going to talk about Wake Forest now. They lost a lot as well. So what are we looking at here with Wake Forest? Key injury too, I believe.
If there's an injury, who's the injury? Or did I miss it or what?
Let's see. Yeah, there's a wide receiver. I don't have it in front of me now, of course.
Well, as I'm talking and look up and miss it.
Yeah.
But Wake Forest is for some reason is like my favorite. They're my adopted college football team this year. At the end of last year, I kind of started falling in love with them. Me and you playfully argued a lot during the season over Sam Hartman. I'm a Hartman fan. I know you're not, but to me, this is like this type of offense. I just saw actually a good comment. I think it's from College Football News. They're saying that Wake Forest offense couldn't move the chains, did absolutely nothing to control the clock. But when the offense worked, it worked. It was fantastic. And that's the way it is with I'm a Sam Hartman guy, and I don't think they came in the last season when Jamie Newman transferred to Georgia. Nobody knew what they had with Hartman, but he came in. He did awesome. He threw for 2,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. He only threw 5 interceptions. And most of them came in that bowl game against Wisconsin where he was terrible. If he can forget that game against Wisconsin, he could have a really good season this year. Definitely flying under the radar for ACC quarterbacks. Definitely a sleeper that nobody's talking about or playing. I'm a big Hartman guy, and I don't see where there's definitely weeks where I can see him. He could definitely be on GVP winning teams. He actually set a program record last year, most consecutive pass attempts without an interception. So, hey, he's got one more season under his belt. The offensive line, I think pretty much the whole offensive line's returning. There was a horrible line last year, but healthier, increased depth, another year under their belt. So I think this could be one of the most successful seasons for Wake Forest in a long time. So Hartman is the man at quarterback, but their main guy is our receiver. I'm a big fan of his. Is Jakari Roberson. He's actually
so the injury is Donovan Green being out for all of 2021, which is a big deal.
Really? Would that just happen?
A couple weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago or something.
All right, so I was a big Green guy last year. Was a freshman too. I played Donovan Green a lot, waiting for that big game. But Jakari Roberson, he's getting all kinds of recognition in preseason. He's on the Maxwell Award watch list, which is the best overall player in college football. He's last year 62 catches, 926 yards, 8 touchdowns, and looking at quotes from all his teammates. They're like, this is a kid possessed. Ever since they played that Wisconsin game, they said he's all he's been talking about. It's coming back with an unbelievable vengeance with his mindset. Spring ball. He's come and spent the whole time practicing with Hartman, and they said he's pretty much taken charge of the whole locker room. So Jakari Roberson is one of the top receivers in the ACC, if not in the country. He may not be on Taj Harris's level yet, but no, Roberson's a big deal for Wake Forest. Running back, you got Christian Bell-Smith. Started all 9 games last year. He led Wake Forest 732 yards rushing, 142 attempts. Found the end zone 5 times. Averaged 83 yards per contest. So Beal Smith, he was the type of guy when last year we played him a bunch of times, expecting a big game out of him. So definitely know he's going to much better. I just drew a blank. And who was the running back last year that just graduated? What doesn't matter, but it's Bell-Smith's job now. He's giving me the RB1. And then we got one other receiver, maybe more of a sleeper you can use some weeks, is Taylor Marin. He was a bunch of injuries last year, moved him from slot receiver to the outside, but he still made plays. He was a redshirt freshman. Finished third on. He had receiving 32 catches, 405 yards, 5 touchdowns. So I'm assuming he starts the season again on the outside. They like him. He's good because he can bounce around anywhere. So he did miss spring camp, but he should be ready to go for the first week. So Moran should be, I think, with the number 2 receiver now, especially now with Donovan Green out. So I like Wake Forest. I think there's a lot of DF. It's the type of team that's going to lose games, but there's a bunch of DFS goodness. Guys that have stacked the sheets, guys like Sam Hartman, definitely Jakari Roberson, and then maybe a little bit of Christian Bell-Smith at running back.
Yeah, Jakari's going to be – there's already people talking about it on Twitter with the Green News a couple weeks back. He's just going to be a target hound. He's going to be super chalky every week because he's going to be dominating. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't have 10-plus targets every week. Even with the defense knowing that, he's just too good for them to stop it. You know, Green had over 500 receiving yards last year, and yeah, you were big on him. So with him out, Jakari's going to be playing his way to an NFL contract, definitely. All right. So yeah, that's the big news. Now, last team here, certainly not the last but not least, Virginia. We have the Virginia fan in the chat right there. Brennan Armstrong, over 2,000 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, rushed for over 500 yards, 5 scores. We were big on Brennan. It seemed like the industry was aware of how good he was, but nobody was like, I don't know. They were too gun shy on playing him. He is a bit of an injury-prone guy at times. There was really 2 main weeks where we lost. We documented it, and one of them was an injury to Michael Penix, but also we had an injury where we kind of min-cashed because Brennan Armstrong got it. He just puts his body on the line a lot. You know, he's trying to. You got to respect him. He tries to make something out of nothing. He won't just take a sack. He's trying to do stuff on the ground, but he really needs to try to rely more on his line to hold because he's gonna lose a body part here soon. And it's gonna be hard to trust him week in and week out if he's just gonna be taking shots to the head or getting sacked left and right or trying to run for 15, 20 yards, which is great on for us DFS wise, but when he takes that shot, it gets up a little woozy and it affects him the next play. So Armstrong's definitely a strong DFS option each and every week, especially with his price point usually being pretty low. That added, dual threat side to him makes him a strong play. But yeah, it was actually one of the rare times where I would maybe like to see a guy maybe not scramble quite as much and rely on his weapons because he definitely has them. I'll skip running back for a second and talk about those weapons at wide receiver. Lavelle Davis had a breakout season last year. Did tear his ACL in spring practice, so that is going to hurt. I was expecting a big season from him. They do have Billy Kemp back, who had 67 catches, 644, and a touchdown. With Davis out, I would expect Kemp to start pushing his way towards a 1,000-yard season. Running back eligibility on DK last year for whatever reason. A lot of us kept plugging him in there because he's Mr. Consistent. Rashaan Henry's going to have to step up this year. He had 7 catches for 206 yards. 4 of those 7 were touchdowns, though. Big-time guy in the red zone. Expect him to jump forward. And then Marshall transfer Artie Henry. He did have 517 yards, 6 touchdowns in 3 years at Marshall. They're going to have to rely on him a lot more now with Davis, out. And they also bring in from Oklahoma State tight end Jelani Woods, 31 catches, 361 yards, 4 touchdowns in his 3 years with the team. So definitely, like I said, have weapons there with Kemp, Henry, 2 Henrys now, Rashaan Henry and Artie Henry, and Jelani Woods. So Billy Kemp's going to be a star, though. And then at running back, not that exciting options. Wayne Talapapa's there, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns this season ago. He's a power back. But he is being pushed for snaps early in spring. And it sounds like Ronnie Walker, the Indiana transfer, was a career 287 yards, 2 touchdown guy, also kind of a plotter, is going to push him for time. So the running game, I'm not that interested in because of Armstrong, and there's no sexy options there. But this receiving core represents some really nice buy low type of players that aren't going to be on many DFS radars, especially early, because people see Brennan Armstrong as a runner as opposed to a passer. They're going to say Lavelle Davis is gone, through an injury, so it's going to suffer. But he has the weapons, and I think that Virginia will be better than people think. And I think we'll see a big season from Rashaan Henry. He's definitely a guy that I could see have a breakout year. But Billy Kemp is definitely be a guy for me that I'll be, targeting pretty heavily, at least early on. So that wraps up the preview. I know this is about an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer show. I appreciate those of you who are listening live and on demand. Lots of information to absorb. Pete, do you want to give any, I don't want to put you on the spot here because I don't have a ton in front of me either, but do you want to give maybe like a sleeper pick of the conference, some DFS option that maybe people aren't really talking about, but, by the end of the season, everybody's going to be using them religiously, I guess, or just anyone that's going to pop off that maybe people aren't talking about?
I don't think it's a sleeper, but I think I'm big on Tai Chandler. So definitely not a sleeper, but he's definitely, he's not in the books as the two big dogs that left last year. So I'm big on Chandler. I'm big on Sean Tucker for Syracuse. Running back. I think he's quietly going to have a decent season. And then also the Mateo Durant, the running back for Duke. I think especially when that, they're not sure what Gunnar's going to do yet. So maybe Mateo Durant might be my top sleeper, actually.
Durant's a great call because he actually became more playable than Djax at times last year because he was getting the bulk of the carries even as the backup. For me, my sleeper is Trey Berry. I gushed about him in the very first part of the show. I just feel like he's going to be a top. I don't know, I've been calling him a top 5 tight end. Maybe I'm too aggressive, but top 10 for sure. I just think he's going to, get a lot of work. After seeing what Hunter Long did for this team last year, he's going to cycle in right into, that number 2 receiver role right behind Zay Flowers and become the possession guy and just be targeted a lot. It's going to be a PPR monster. And like I said, Alabama and LSU do not go after guys who aren't winners or won't put up stats. So if they're going after a guy like that from Jacksonville State, just imagine what he's going to be capable of in the ACC, which is obviously a weaker conference than SEC, if we're being, everybody can admit that. Still a good conference, but SEC is, on another level right now. For me, it's Trey Berry. Maybe a little bit of what was I going to say? Jeff Sims, if he can improve as a passer, maybe not necessarily a sleeper, but just a guy that doesn't, not expected to be much of, anything besides a runner, somebody to step up there, or maybe even a Jordan Travis if he were to beat Milton for the starting QB job there at FSU. So
I agree. I agree with Sims. I think Jeff Sims is going to have a closer breakout year. I agree with that.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. Pete, what do you got going on next? You got a baseball show tomorrow, or what's going on? Sunday morning or Sunday morning show. Another full week though. Next week, Saturdays always split slates with MLB, so it's tough. But yeah, within 2 weeks tomorrow, CFB is starting, man. Then we're back. Then we'll have those weekday MAC action games, right? I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to I'll be doing a lot of showdowns this year, especially during the week while you're covering the big slates, the classics. But we'll have everybody covered, especially on both classic and showdown slates. So if there's a slate, we're covering it. Yeah, you guys can expect the Thursday night podcast to come out on Spotify and all that, Apple Podcasts, and then our Saturday morning live stream where we talk about any last minute news and how that applies to the slate. And we're not going to just drop off a CFL. We'll still be doing that CFL midweek show, getting you guys ready for that as well. Our guy Brian Burnham yesterday had a nice 100-yard receiving game by halftime, actually, at this 9%. So I haven't checked on the game that's going on right now. I've been grinding summer league. And
Oliveira has had a tough first half. I wonder if he did anything second half.
Dang. I think he's probably chalky because, I mean, without Harris, but you have to take a look. And then WNBA, we start Sunday. There's a big 5-6 game slate there. Another 4 or 5 slate on Tuesday. Lots of 5K to first GPPs going on. So expect some WNBA write-ups from me. Maybe even a combo show if Pete can find the schedule for me on Sunday to jump on with them. So
let's do that then.
Okay, cool. So he's Pete Cole. I'm Walt Wardell. Thank you very much. We're going to try to get at very least an SEC show because that's the conference you definitely need to know, and we'll want to put a lot of time into that for you guys. So I appreciate it. Bringing you more than just fantasy coverage, sports media in general. We have lots of goals, missions, and hopes and dreams that we want to share with you. So thank you to Mafa for producing as always. Appreciate it, guys. We'll see you on Sunday with MLB and some WNBA action.
Thanks, guys. Good luck.